The humiliation. Jake stood quietly in the center of the massive alien chamber. The room was bright, almost too bright for his human eyes. Everything around him felt strange, glowing walls, shimmering floors, and technology he couldn't understand. But worst of all was the laughter echoing around him, loud and cruel. Two alien sisters, Zara and Rena, stood high above Jake, on a floating platform decorated with jewels and symbols of their empire. They were princesses, daughters of the mighty alien emperor. Zara, the elder sister, had sharp features and eyes filled with arrogance. Rena, the younger sister, was quieter, but still shared her sister's cold pride. Look at this pathetic creature. Zara laughed, her voice sharp and clear in the massive chamber. A human soldier. Is this all Earth has to offer? Around them, dozens of alien nobles laughed too, their voices mixed into one mocking chorus. Jake clenched his fists, his face hot with embarrassment. He was trained to fight and survive, but never to handle this kind of humiliation. Perhaps it can entertain us, Zara suggested, smirking. She turned to Jake and spoke slowly, as if speaking to a child. Human, show us your strength, prove you're worth something. Jake swallowed hard. He knew they wanted him to fail, but he also knew humans were capable of surprising strength. He nodded quietly, accepting the challenge without a word. Rena watched him curiously, but Zara only smirked, sure of his humiliation. Guard suddenly stepped forward and placed a heavy metal sphere in front of Jake. It glowed softly, clearly a powerful alien device. Zara laughed again, waving dramatically. Lift it, human. If you fail, everyone will see your weakness clearly. Jake stepped forward, heart pounding. He bent down, gripping the sphere. It was surprisingly heavy, far heavier than anything he had lifted before. He strained, muscles aching, sweat dripping from his forehead. Zara's laugh echoed again, louder. See, the human is weak, she announced confidently, but Jake refused to quit. Determination burned in his chest. He adjusted his stance, took a deep breath, and lifted with every bit of his strength. Slowly, the sphere began to rise. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Zara's arrogant smile faded slightly. Jake continued to lift the sphere, higher and higher, despite the pain shooting through his body. Impossible. Zara gasped, her eyes wide. But then, just as Jake almost stood fully straight, the sphere suddenly flashed brightly, sending an electric shock through him. Pain exploded in his muscles, and Jake dropped to the floor, stunned and gasping. The crowd laughed again, louder and crueler than before. You cheated, Jake shouted angrily, struggling to stand. This test wasn't fair. Zara smirked again, eyes glittering with amusement. Fair? You're nothing but entertainment here. Human. Jake's fist shook with frustration. He had never felt this helpless before. Rena observed him closely, her expression unreadable, but curious. Zara motioned to the guards. Take him away. He bores me now. As Jake was dragged from the chamber, laughter still rang in his ears, but deep within, he felt anger and determination. He vowed silently to himself that he would never be mocked again. Hours later, Jake sat, alone in a small, glowing cell, tired and humiliated. His thoughts were racing. He knew he had to find a way to overcome this humiliation, to prove to these aliens and especially Zara that he wasn't weak. He knew humans had survived countless challenges throughout history, and he believed he could do the same here. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up sharply through the energy barrier. He saw a shadowy figure. It was Rena, the quieter alien princess. She stepped closer, observing Jake calmly. You surprised me today, human, she said softly, without the arrogance of her sister. Jake eyed her warily. Are you here to mock me too? Rena shook her head gently. No. I'm curious about you. Humans fight differently than we do. You lifted the sphere further than most of our soldiers could. Jake blinked, surprised. Then why did your sister humiliate me? Zara sees strength differently. She fears what she cannot understand, Rena explained quietly. But I think there's something special about humans. Maybe even about you. Jake stared, hope flickering inside him. Why are you telling me this? Rena hesitated briefly, then answered softly, because my sister might underestimate you, but I won't. You survived today. Maybe you'll survive more. She turned away abruptly, disappearing down the corridor, leaving Jake alone again, but no longer hopeless. Jake felt something new, a spark of determination. He realized this was his chance. If Rena believed he could survive, maybe others would have died. Jake leaned back against the cold wall, eyes determined and mind racing with plans. Zyra had laughed at him, mocked him, humiliated him, but now he had a new purpose. He would learn their ways, earn their respect, and one day make them see him not as a weak human, but as something they never expected. As Jake drifted into restless sleep, the humiliation he felt earlier transformed into a powerful promise. He would not just survive, he would thrive. He would prove Zyra and every alien wrong, no matter what it took. Unexpected strength. Jake lay quietly on the floor of his glowing prison cell, his mind racing. He had barely slept, haunted by memories of Zyra's mocking laughter and the humiliation he suffered in front of countless aliens. But now, a different thought burned in his mind, one sparked by Rena's mysterious words. As Jake stood up, stretching his aching muscles, he noticed something strange. On the floor beside his cell door was a small, glowing object. He moved cautiously toward it and picked it up. It felt cool and smooth in his palm, a crystal shard pulsing softly with energy. A small hologram flickered to life above it. To Jake's shock, Rena's image appeared, speaking softly, eyes serious and determined. "Jake, if you're seeing this, listen carefully. Zyra will test you again. She fears your potential, even though she laughs at you. The crystal you hold contains secrets of our empire, our language, technology, and weaknesses. Learn quickly. Your survival depends on it." The hologram vanished instantly, leaving Jake stunned and confused. Rena had betrayed her sister's empire, risking everything to help him. Why would she trust a human prisoner? He sat back, carefully examining the crystal. As he touched it again, strange symbols appeared before his eyes, swirling gently around him. Amazingly, he realized he could suddenly understand them. Hours passed as Jake absorbed the alien knowledge, his mind expanding rapidly. He learned not only how to communicate in their language, but how their technology functioned. Each piece of information empowered him, making him more confident. He felt no longer helpless, but powerful. Suddenly, the door of his cell opened sharply. Jake quickly hid the crystal beneath his clothes as Zyra strode inside, arrogance radiating from her every step. "Human," Zyra sneered, glaring at Jake coldly. "You think you can embarrass me in my own empire?" Jake remained silent, meeting her gaze steadily. Zyra's anger flared at his quiet confidence. "Speak, human, or have you lost your courage already?" she demanded. "I'm not afraid of you," Jake replied firmly, his voice calm yet strong, surprising even himself. Zyra's eyes narrowed dangerously. "We'll see about that." Without warning, Zyra waved her hand, and suddenly Jake felt himself transported instantly to another chamber. It was enormous, dark, and cold. He quickly realized he stood in a massive maze, walls rising endlessly around him, glowing faintly with eerie blue lights. Zyra's cruel voice echoed loudly above. "This is your next challenge. Survive and perhaps you'll earn some respect. Fail, and no one will remember you," she mocked harshly. "Begin." Jake heard a terrifying roar echo somewhere deep in the maze. Adrenaline flooded through him. He ran forward quickly, heart pounding. His human instincts screamed danger, yet he felt strangely calm, driven by the knowledge he now held. As he ran through winding corridors, strange creatures emerged, monstrous and fierce, blocking his path. Jake remembered what he learned from the crystal. These creatures relied on brute strength but had poor eyesight. Thinking quickly, Jake slowed his breathing, calming himself completely. He picked up loose stones scattered across the floor and hurled them down a different corridor. The creatures instantly charged toward the noise, leaving his path clear. Jake swiftly moved past, marveling at his newfound cleverness. Deeper in the maze, Jake encountered glowing traps, lasers, and sharp blades designed to cut him down. But instead of fear, Jake felt clarity. He remembered how alien technology worked. Carefully, he reached out, quickly rearranging glowing symbols on nearby panels, shutting down each trap safely. Zyra watched from above, eyes wide in shock. "Impossible," she hissed, gripping the railing tightly. No human had ever mastered their technology this quickly. How was Jake defying everything she knew? Finally, Jake approached the heart of the maze, a huge, open chamber. Waiting there was a massive robotic guardian, towering and powerful, its metal fists clenched and eyes glowing red with menace. Zyra's voice echoed again. "Now you face true strength, human. You cannot win." Jake stood firm, breathing deeply. He knew raw strength was not enough here. Instead, he relied on human ingenuity and the crystal's teachings. As the robotic guardian charged, Jake quickly dodged, observing carefully. He noticed weak points, small glowing joints beneath heavy armor. Using sharp metal shards from the broken traps he disabled, Jake hurled them with pinpoint accuracy, hitting each weak spot precisely. The robot staggered, sparks flying wildly. Zyra screamed with frustration as Jake leaped onto the robot's back, using his newfound understanding of alien technology to disable it from within. The giant guardian collapsed with a mighty crash, leaving Jake victorious and unharmed. Breathing heavily, Jake stood in the silent chamber, proud and empowered. Suddenly, the maze walls vanished, revealing a stunned alien audience. Zyra stared at him, humiliated, anger burning brightly in her eyes. How did you do this?" she stammered furiously. Unable to hide her disbelief, Jake smiled slightly, strength radiating quietly from his gaze. "You underestimated humans. You underestimated me." The crowd murmured in astonishment. Zyra, enraged and embarrassed, stormed away. But Rena watched quietly from the shadows, smiling slightly with satisfaction. Later, back in his cell, Jake held the crystal gently, knowing the path ahead would only grow harder. Yet, he felt no fear now, only determination. But as he drifted off into sleep, an uneasy feeling filled him. The crystal vibrated slightly, a warning pulsing through it. Rena's image appeared again briefly, face urgent and worried. "Be careful, Jake. Zyra won't stop until she destroys you. A greater danger is coming, far more powerful than anything you've faced." Jake sat up sharply, heart racing. This battle was just beginning, and he knew his journey was about to become even more challenging and far more dangerous. But Jake felt ready. Now he wasn't just a simple human soldier, he was becoming something more, something unexpected, something the arrogant alien empire had never imagined. He was becoming their greatest surprise, and soon, their king. The secret weapon. Jake sat quietly in his glowing prison cell, gripping the crystal tightly. Sleep had become nearly impossible, his mind consumed by the warnings Rena had given him. The hologram's last message echoed ominously in his thoughts. There was a greater danger coming, something even worse than Zyra's cruelty. He carefully placed the crystal on the floor, watching it pulse gently. Suddenly, it flashed, projecting a new hologram that illuminated the small space around him. This time, it showed Rena looking anxious, urgently whispering, "Jake, time is running out. My sister Zyra has called a special council meeting. She plans to blame humans for everything that's gone wrong, especially your victories. If she succeeds, she will turn every alien against your entire species. You must stop her." Jake's heart pounded. He couldn't let Zyra's hatred destroy humanity. He knew he needed to act swiftly, but how? He was still trapped in this tiny cell. Then, the crystal shimmered again, revealing a new image. This one showed an ancient alien manuscript covered with strange symbols. Jake recognized the language now and read quickly, absorbing every word. His eyes widened in surprise. It described an ancient prophecy. In the darkest times, a weak outsider shall rise. Through compassion, strength, and courage, he shall unify the broken and rule above all. Jake stared, breathless. Was this prophecy about him? Could he, a simple human, really become king? His thoughts were interrupted sharply. Heavy footsteps approached, echoing through the corridors. Jake swiftly hid the crystal as Zyra appeared at his cell door, her eyes cold and dangerous. "Get up, human," Zyra snapped bitterly. "Today you'll finally see what your defiance has caused." Jake silently stood, following Zyra through winding halls to a huge, grand chamber filled with hundreds of alien representatives. They murmured angrily as Jake entered, their eyes filled with suspicion and dislike. Zyra climbed onto a raised platform and began speaking, her voice sharp and loud. "My fellow citizens, this human, Jake, has insulted our empire, mocked our traditions, and defied our rules. His presence has corrupted even my own sister, Rena." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Jake's eyes quickly found Rena in the shadows, visibly nervous but determined. Zyra continued fiercely, "Humans are dangerous. Their weakness infects us. Today we must end this threat forever." Cheers erupted, filling Jake's chest with dread. Zyra had successfully turned everyone against him. But suddenly, Rena stepped forward, her voice powerful and clear, cutting through the chaos. "You lie, sister. Jake has shown strength beyond what we believed possible. Perhaps the prophecy is true. Maybe he is the leader we've been waiting for." The crowd fell silent, stunned. Zyra glared furiously at Rena. "You betray us for this weak creature," Zyra demanded angrily. Rena stood firm, meeting her sister's gaze. I stand for truth and for unity. Jake felt inspired by Rena's courage. He stepped forward, drawing the attention of the room. I came here as a prisoner. Jake began calmly, his voice echoing clearly. You saw me as weak, but humans have survived countless hardships through unity, compassion, and courage. This isn't weakness, it's our greatest strength. The alien audience murmured uncertainly. Many intrigued, Jake continued passionately. Zyra wants you divided, fearful, but unity, not fear, is our true weapon. If you give humanity a chance, you'll see we can help each other. Together, we'll overcome threats far greater than me. Some aliens nodded thoughtfully, but Zyra refused to relent. You dare challenge my rule, human, she shouted, enraged. No, Jake replied strongly. I challenge your fear, your arrogance. Blinds you two, what could make us stronger together? Zyra's eyes flared dangerously. Enough. Guards, take him to the arena of judgment. We'll settle this publicly. Jake was swiftly taken away. He glanced back once at Rena, whose worried eyes followed him. Jake's heart raced, knowing whatever the arena held, it wouldn't be easy. Soon, Jake stood in an enormous, crowded arena. Aliens from across the Empire filled the seats. Eager for a spectacle, Jake saw Zyra high above, smirking confidently. This human claimed strength through compassion and courage. She mocked loudly. Let him prove it against our Empire's ultimate guardian. Suddenly, the arena shook violently. Gates opened slowly, revealing a creature Jake had never imagined, a gigantic beast, armored and furious, with piercing red eyes. It towered over Jake, growling fiercely. The crowd gasped in horror, but Zyra smiled cruelly. If you defeat this beast, human, perhaps your people deserve mercy. But failure means your end and the end of humanity's hope. Jake steadied his breath, remembering the crystal's lessons. The prophecy was clear. Compassion, courage, and strength were the keys. Jake decided to try something unexpected, something profoundly human. He lowered his stance, calmly approaching the enormous beast with open hands. The crowd watched silently, stunned by Jake's fearless actions. What are you doing, human? Zyra shouted, confused and angry. Fight. But Jake continued softly, speaking calmly and gently, trying to soothe the creature instead of fighting it. You've been hurt, Jake spoke clearly, noticing deep scars and painful injuries on the beast's body. I don't want to hurt you. Let me help you instead. The creature stopped suddenly. Confused by Jake's compassion, Jake slowly reached out, placing a gentle hand on the beast's huge leg. Amazingly, the beast calmed, its rage fading rapidly. The alien audience stared, stunned, as Jake cared for the beast's wounds tenderly, earning its trust. From above, Zyra's face contorted, with disbelief and anger. No, this is impossible. But the audience began cheering loudly, deeply moved by Jake's act of compassion and courage. Rena smiled proudly, knowing Jake had truly revealed humanity's unique strength. As Jake stood beside the now calm beast, the crowd roared approval. Jake felt something incredible: acceptance. He had shown these aliens something new, something powerful, unity through compassion. Suddenly, Zyra's furious voice echoed, cold and dangerous. You may have fooled the others, human, but I promise your victory will be short-lived. There is a secret enemy coming, and when they arrive, no compassion will save you. A chill raced through Jake's spine. Zyra's warning felt darkly true, but he knew he was ready, whatever danger approached. He now stood not as a prisoner, but as a leader who could unite these aliens with humanity. Quietly, Jake lifted his eyes, determination burning brightly inside him. He would be ready. He would unify, lead, and survive no matter the cost. The prophecy had begun to unfold, and Jake would soon discover the true meaning of leadership, sacrifice, and courage. The Empire's darkest challenge was yet to come in, and he was the only hope they had. The turning point, the sky above the alien capital, had never been this dark. Storm clouds rumbled silently over the Empire's towering spires, as if the very planet sensed something was about to change. Below, the arena remained silent, still, echoing with the memory of a human who had tamed a beast not with weapons, but with understanding. That human Jake now stood at the edge of history, but Zyra wasn't finished. High above in her royal chamber, she paced back and forth like a cornered predator. Her plan had failed. The crowd had cheered for Jake. Even members of her own council had begun to whisper behind her back. She had rolled through fear and superiority her entire life, but now, one human was cracking the foundations of her empire. She paused, staring at a hidden vault in the wall. Slowly, She pressed her hand to a glowing panel. The vault opened with a sharp hiss, revealing something ancient and dangerous. Inside was a small cube, pulsing with unstable energy. It was a weapon illegal, forbidden even by her own empire. It had been locked away for centuries for one reason: it didn't kill bodies. It shattered minds. Zyra's lips curled into a bitter smile. If they admire the human for his mind, then I'll take it from him. Jake was taken back to his cell, though this time it wasn't locked. It was more like a guest room, now clean, spacious, and oddly quiet. Outside, guards stood silently, not as jailers, but as protectors. Word had spread fast. Jake wasn't just a prisoner anymore. He was something else now, perhaps even a symbol. Rena entered quietly, her face full of worry. "You moved them, Jake, even those who hated you," she said. Jake looked up from the crystal he still studied each night. "Then why do I feel like something worse is coming?" Rena hesitated. "Because something is." She showed him a report intercepted by one of her spies, an order signed by Zyra herself. It read, "Project Mindshard, activate immediately." Jake stared at the name, unsure of what it meant. But the fear in Rena's eyes said enough. "She's not going to fight you directly anymore," Rena said quietly. "She wants to destroy what makes you, you." Jake's jaw tightened. "Then I have to get ahead of her." Later that night, Jake stood before the Grand Council of the Empire. Every leader from every system watched him closely. Zyra sat at the far end, calm and smiling politely, but her eyes were cold as ice. Jake stepped forward. "I was once your enemy, a stranger, a joke," he said, "but I never came to destroy your people. I came to survive. And now I see something bigger, something worth fighting for. Not just my life, not just my planet, but all of us." The room remained quiet, listening. "For the first time in your history, you have the chance to unite with something truly different. Not to conquer it, not to fear it, but to grow with it." Whispers spread among the council. Jake continued, "You want strength. Humanity has it. You want loyalty. We have that too. But if you want a future where your children don't fight your wars, where they build, learn, and dream, then don't follow fear. Don't follow Zyra." Zyra stood slowly, her voice like velvet soaked in venom. "And what do you offer us, human? Forgiveness, peace, a bedtime story." "I offer you something your empire hasn't seen in centuries," Jake answered. "Hope." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Zyra smirked. "Then let's test your hope." She raised her hand, and from behind her throne, a dark figure entered the room, tall, mechanical, silent. Its eyes glowed with the same unstable energy as the cube she had revealed earlier. It was the Mindshard unit. "Jake will undergo the trial of purity," Zyra announced. "Let's see if his mind is as strong as his words." "No," Rena shouted, stepping forward. "That's forbidden." But the council murmured with interest. They wanted to see it. Jake knew he couldn't back down now. "I accept," he said. The trial of purity wasn't a battle of fists. It was a battle of memory, pain, and will. Jake was placed inside a chamber where the Mindshard unit connected directly to his mind. Instantly, everything around him changed. He was no longer on the alien planet. He was back on Earth. In the war, gunfire rang in his ears. Explosions shook the ground. He saw friends fall beside him, screaming. He saw the face of his younger brother smiling, alive and then gone in a flash. "No," Jake whispered, feeling old wounds reopen in his chest. The Mindshard twisted his memories, turning love into pain and hope into failure. It showed him 100 reasons to give up, to let go. But Jake didn't break. Instead, he began remembering the voices of those who believed in him. The beast he had calmed, the people he had saved, Rena's words, the prophecy. "I'm not afraid anymore," he whispered, standing inside the storm of his own mind. "You can't break me." A bright light exploded from within his consciousness, and the machine short-circuited with a screech, smoke pouring from its core. Jake fell to his knees, exhausted but whole. The chamber doors opened. Rena ran to him. Zyra stood frozen, her plan destroyed once again, and this time, the council did not stay silent. "We see the truth now," one counselor said. "You led through fear. He leads through strength." Another added, "Perhaps it is time for new leadership." Zyra stepped back, trembling, but Jake didn't ask for power. Instead, he looked at her with quiet strength. "I didn't come to take your throne, Zyra, but if you won't step aside, I'll lead the people who are ready." Zyra said nothing. She turned and walked out, defeated but not finished. Later, as Jake recovered in a quiet chamber, Rena sat beside him. "You've changed everything," she whispered. Jake looked out the window at the alien skyline, now filled with lights, voices, and something new. "I didn't come here to be a king," he said softly. "But maybe it's not about what we come for. It's about what we become when we're tested." But far in the distance, beyond the edge of the Empire, something ancient stirred in space. Zyra wasn't the true enemy. She was only the beginning. And the real war hadn't even started yet. Rising hero of the Empire was changing across alien cities, on space stations orbiting gas giants, and in underwater colonies beneath sapphire oceans. One name echoed on every tongue: Jake. Not as a prisoner, not as a human, but as a symbol of something the Empire had forgotten. Hope. But hope, like fire, attracts shadows. Far beyond the known systems, deep in the void between galaxies, a presence had awakened. It stirred in silence, unseen, unknown, but very real. It watched the rise of the human with growing interest. And hatred. Meanwhile, Jake stood on a balcony in the palace's upper level. Looking over the city, it was alive with energy. Banners had changed. Guards who once sneered at him now saluted. Children waved at him from hover platforms. Not with fear but admiration. He didn't smile. "I didn't come here to be a leader," he said quietly. Rena, standing beside him, replied calmly, "You didn't choose leadership. It chose you." Jake turned toward her. "Zyra's gone for now, but she's not finished. And the people, they're looking at me like I've already won something." Rena's voice dropped. "Because they think we saved them." Jake looked back at the skyline. But the war hasn't even started. That night, an emergency signal pierced the sky, an automated distress call from Arc-class Station 7, a scientific outpost positioned at the edge of the Empire's protected zone. Jake and Rena rushed to the command center. Holograms flickered. To life, static-filled footage from the station showed flashes of chaos, alarms blaring, lights flickering, scientists running, then total silence, then something chilling, a voice, not Zyra, not a native dialect, a voice both ancient and wrong. "The waking begins. The Empire must fall." Then blackness. The transmission cut. Rena froze. That wasn't one of us." Jake's heart pounded. "We need to get there, now." They traveled in the Dawnbreaker, a new hybrid starship designed by Jake's growing team of human engineer and alien tech allies. The crew aboard was mixed. Alien rebels loyal to Rena, human tech specialists sent from Earth after Jake's message had reached home, and warriors who had once served Zyra but now pledged their blades to him. As the Dawnbreaker crossed into the outer zone, silence grew thick. The space around the station was wrong. Dead still. No energy signals. No defense scans. The ship slowed. Then they saw it. Our class Station 7 was floating. Dark and broken, its hull ripped open like it had been peeled apart by invisible claws. Lights flickered weakly. No life signals. Jake suited up. "I'm going in." Inside the station, the halls were filled with silence and drifting debris. Jake led a small team through, torchlights slicing through darkness. But it wasn't just a destroyed lab. It was a message on the walls, glowing in strange alien symbols none of their translators could decode. Were phrases that repeated over and over again. "We have returned. Unity is weakness. The king must fall." Jake stared at the walls. "This isn't Zyra's work." "No," Rena said, shaken. "This is something older, something ancient." Suddenly, movement, a survivor, barely alive, an alien scientist crawled from beneath debris. His eyes were glazed with fear, his voice shaking. They came through the dark. Not ships, not bodies, just shadows, thoughts. They entered minds, took them. Jake knelt. Who are they?" The scientist whispered one word before going still. "Voss." Jake had never heard the name, but the fear behind it chilled him to his core. Back aboard the Dawnbreaker, the crew analyzed what little data remained. Rena brought forward an ancient archive, something hidden by the royal family long ago. "It was only a myth," she whispered. "A story told to scare children. The Voss, a race of mind parasites. They don't invade planets, they invade people." Jake's hands tightened on the edge of the console. "Zyra isn't our biggest threat anymore." Rena nodded grimly. "She never was." Jake knew what had to be done. Back on the Empire's capital world, he stood before a new gathering. This time, he wasn't just asking for trust, he was declaring a call to arms. "We are no longer separated by species, not by blood, Not by borders, he said, standing tall before millions watching across the stars. A force is coming that sees all of us as prey. I won't let them take what we built together. I ask not as a human. I ask as one of you. Stand with me not for power, not for conquest, but for survival, for unity. And they answered. Aliens who once served Zyra now lined up in ranks, pledging to fight. Human ships arrived from Earth, carrying supplies and soldiers. And for the first time in history, a joint fleet of human and alien alliance prepared to face a war against an enemy, older than their stars. But not all were loyal. Far away, in the shadows of a dead moon, Zyra stood watching. She had heard the name Voss, and she knew what it meant. Her father had warned her once, but she smiled, not in fear and ambition. If they want a king, she whispered, turning toward the darkness, let them bleed for one. Behind her, hidden in the shadows, something watched her to something ancient something. Smiling Jake, now leader of an unlikely alliance, stared at the galactic map flickering in the war room. The Voss were spreading fast, infecting minds, taking control of entire systems without firing a single shot. He placed his hand on the table. No more speeches. No more proving himself. Now, it was war. The king emerged as the stars were no longer silent. Across the edge of the galaxy, systems fell like dominoes. One by one, outposts went dark, not from fire or bombs, but something worse, silence. Entire fleets stopped answering transmissions. Colonies sent one final distress call before vanishing, and everywhere Jake turned, he heard the same name. The Voss thought they were not invaders in the traditional sense. They didn't land with warships or soldiers. They slipped through signals, hacked minds, and whispered into thoughts. They didn't destroy, they consumed. And now, they were coming. Jake stood before a holo map filled with red zones, spreading like a virus. The human-alien alliance he had worked so hard to build was under pressure. Cracks were forming. Fear was spreading, even among his own people. One of his generals, a hardened warrior named Kelthorn, slammed his fist on the war table. This enemy doesn't fight fair. They control minds. How do we stop an army when the enemy might be our own soldiers? Murmurs filled the command chamber. Jake looked up. We don't fight them like an army. We fight them like humans. Confused silence. Jake stood tall, his voice calm, but filled with fire. Every empire they destroyed lost because it fractured. It panicked. It turned on itself. That won't happen here. Not under me. Kelthorn narrowed his eyes. And if they get inside your head, too, human, Jake met his stare. Then I burned them out. Later that night, Jake sat alone in his private chamber. He stared at his reflection in a black mirror and old alien ritual glass. But what he saw was not the same man who had once been mocked in chains. He had scars now, not just physical but deep inside. He had led armies, broken a princess, tamed beasts, earned loyalty where humans were once seen as pests. But this wasn't pride in his eyes. It was weight. You didn't come here to rule. A voice echoed. Rena. She stood at the door, her tone quiet, almost sad. But you're becoming exactly what they need. Jake turned slowly. And what if I'm not? Enough? Rena stepped closer. You're already more than any of them expected. But that crown you're building, she pointed to the glowing symbol etched into his armor, will either save them or crush you. The next day, the Alliance fleet gathered. Thousands of ships from both Earth and alien systems now hovered in orbit above a dead moon. Jake had chosen it as the staging ground for a final move operation Eclipse to strike deep into Voss territory, aiming to destroy the central node believed to be controlling the invasion. But the plan had one flaw. They didn't know exactly where the node was, or who might already be compromised within their fleet. Jake stood in the command bridge of the Dawnbreaker, staring into the swirling abyss of space. Suddenly, alarms rang. Unauthorized signal spike in ship group C, a comms officer shouted. Before anyone could react, one of the cruisers turned its weapons inward, firing directly into its own fleet. Betrayal. The Voss were already inside. The bridge shook violently. Jake grabbed onto a rail, shut down comms on that cruiser, sever all AI links now. He barked. Another officer turned. Too late. They've taken it. Jake made a brutal call. Disable the cruiser. No survivors. There was a pause, sir. Jake's jaw clenched. I said fire. A moment later, their own fleet vaporized the cruiser along with 3,000 lives. Silence. Rena, watching from across the bridge, realized what had just happened. Jake was no longer a symbol. He was a king now, and kings make decisions no one else can bear. Later, Jake stood at the heart of the war council. The survivors shaken but loyal looked to him, waiting for orders. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He simply said, "This war is not about ships or weapons. It's about will. The Voss break empires by breaking spirits." He stepped forward, his words striking like lightning. "I won't let that happen to us." He turned to each commander. "You will hold your lines. You will trust each other. You will believe in what we're building. Because if you don't, we're already lost." And they believed, not because he demanded it, but because he had become the only one they could believe in. But deep in the outer rim, Zyra was watching. She hadn't vanished. She had been planning, waiting. And now she had made contact with the Voss, but not to beg for mercy. To offer them something. She stood alone before a strange portal, glowing with dark energy. Whispers filled the air, voices not of this world. "You fear him," Zyra said quietly. "So do I." The voices replied, "He cannot be broken." Zyra smiled. "Then let me do what you can't." From behind her, a shadow moved, tall, shapeless. Its eyes glowed violet. Zyra knelt. And as the portal closed, a new pact was formed. Zyra would return, not as a princess, but as a weapon. Back on the Dawnbreaker, Jake held the crystal again. It flickered to life, but this time, it didn't show Rena. It showed a map. An ancient one. It pulsed once, then revealed a blinking red dot at the far edge of Voss space. The source, Jake whispered, the final node, the Voss brain, the heart of the nightmare, his final war. He stood at the window again, watching the stars. They no longer felt distant. They felt close. He wasn't just a human anymore. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a leader of millions. He was a symbol of rebellion. He was, whether he liked it or not, their king. True unity. The galaxy held its breath across thousands of systems. Species who once feared each other now watched one name move toward the heart of darkness. Jake, no longer a prisoner, no longer a visitor from Earth. He had become a symbol, a general, a king, and now he was walking into the deadliest corner of the universe. But Jake didn't come alone. The Dawnbreaker, scarred but unbeaten, led a fleet of over 600 ships, all races, all united under a single purpose, end the war with the Voss at the source. The location was clear now. A gravity-dead star system once thriving, now silent. Orbiting the collapsed sun was a single black construct shaped like a massive crown, the Mind Spire. The heart of the Voss consciousness, the origin of the infection. No ship had ever returned from that system, and yet Jake was going in. Rena stood by his side, quiet and steady. She had watched him change from a man uncertain of his place to a leader galaxies now depended on. But now, she feared the cost of that transformation. "Jake," she said softly, "when this is over, will you still be you?" Jake didn't answer right away. He stared at the Mind Spire's growing shadow. "I don't think I'm meant to survive this." "You're not allowed to say that," she said sharply, grabbing his arm. Jake looked at her, his voice steady but heavy. "This isn't just war anymore. This is legacy. And sometimes legacy demands everything." Rena turned away, tears forming but never falling. She knew she couldn't stop him. No one could. Hours later, the invasion began. Allied ships poured into the dead system, engines roaring, shields raised. Immediately, dark energy flared from the Mind Spire. Entire battle cruisers vanished without a trace. They weren't destroyed, they were consumed. The Voss didn't fight with ships. They fought through fear. Commanders began hearing voices. Some ordered retreats without realizing it. Others fired on their own allies. The infection was spreading in real time. Jake activated the one thing the Voss couldn't understand. Unity Protocol, a psychic bonding technology developed by combining human neural empathy with alien resonance crystals. The result, for the first time in history, every member of the Alliance could feel each other's fear and strength and hope. "We fight as one." Jake's voice echoed into every mind. "And if we die as one, but not broken, not afraid." Across the fleet, panic slowed. Eyes cleared. Voices calmed. The infection stalled. Jake had done the impossible. He had turned emotion into a weapon. Now it was time for the final step. Jake, Rena, and a strike team launched from the Dawnbreaker, flying toward the surface of the Mind Spire in a drop pod. The atmosphere around the Black Crown was thick with psychic noise, screams, whispers. Cries for help that weren't real. Inside the Mind Spire, the halls were alive, shifting with black material, shaped from memory and trauma. Jake walked ahead, heart pounding, sweat dripping. But he pressed forward, and at the very center, they found it. The Voss core. Not a machine, not a brain, but a being, shaped like light and shadow, floating in a black void. It had no mouth, yet it spoke directly into their minds. You do not belong here. Jake stepped forward. I didn't belong in your empire either. Now I run it. The Voss being pulsed, flashing images into Jake's thoughts, Earth burning, Rena dying, his crew lost. Everything he feared pushed into his mind at once. Jake fell to his knees, but he didn't fall alone. Rena reached for him, placing her hand on his shoulder. The others followed. One by one, every member of his team linked minds. Using the same unity protocol he had created, together, they pushed back. Together, they overwhelmed the core's power. Jake stood again, this time glowing, surrounded by flickers of thought and love and memories. The Voss couldn't hold them all. The hive mind cracked. Unity had become their weapon and their virus. The core screamed. The Mind Spire shook violently. Jake activated the core destabilizer, planning the final charge. As they turned to escape, the construct began collapsing, but something blocked their exit. Zyra. Only she wasn't fully Zyra anymore. Her body glowed with Voss energy, her eyes fully violet. You led them here, she whispered. Voice, inhuman. You ruined everything. Jake stepped forward. You chose fear, Zyra. I chose hope, she screamed, unleashing a wave of psychic force. But Jake didn't flinch. He walked into it. Each step burned. But he walked. And when he reached her, he didn't raise a weapon. He held out his hand. Let go. For a moment, just one, the Voss inside her hesitated. And Zyra did. Her body collapsed into Jake's arms, unconscious but alive. Behind them, the Mind Spire cracked wide open, bleeding light. They ran. The Dawnbreaker caught them seconds before. The system exploded. A wave of light shot across the galaxy. The psychic tether holding the Voss together was gone. Their influence shattered in a single moment. Planets awoke. Ships returned to normal. And the war was over. 3 weeks later, on the rebuilt capital, Jake stood before billions. No crown, no throne, just a voice. I didn't come here to lead. I came to survive. But together, we did more than that. We built something greater. We found a future, not for humans, not for aliens, but for all of us. He turned toward Zyra, who now stood among the crowd, not as a ruler, but as a survivor. We were enemies once, but today, we're family. The crowd erupted into cheers. Later, Rena joined Jake on the same balcony where his journey had changed forever. They still want to call you king, she said with a smile. Jake looked out at the stars. I don't care what they call me, as long as they remember what we stood for. She smiled. And what was that? Jake looked at her, softly. True unity, the end.